All right. Okay. Am I on now? Good. So I'm Ville. I work for the Finnish government Ministry of Culture and Education in the Department of Art, Culture and Art as an artist expert. And my background in education and previously has been as a visual artist. Are we having technical difficulties, or is the sound coming through? We good? If I say things, can we figure out if it's good or not? Sound. Sound not good? Should sound be good? What can we do about the sound? So there's nothing we can do about the sound. All right. Beauty of live streaming. 5 minutes break. All right, good. Hello. Testing. Is it working through the stream now? Are we having audio? No? Is there a chat option that somebody on stream could confirm if we have problems over that end? Same choppiness. Even though I'm speaking so smoothly. Are we now officially on?
Yeah.
This is an example of life imitating art. And wait a minute, I'll run through my interaction. I still have 10 minutes. So I'm Ville Kirjanen, artist, producer, curator, government bureaucrat, and I was asked to give a speech on the topic of artistic thinking as a creative practice. I made a structured speech on the matter, and 15 minutes before I was going to go on, as a sort of a panic attack, I was going to throw it all out the window. It was going to be dramatic, but now all the hassle with the sound thing sort of took the wind out of my dramatic sails. But I'm going to go again with my plan of giving my speech sort of. I'm going to do this as an artistic, as an example of artistic thinking. Because we're sort of in extraordinary situations here, and I thought like more engaging is like, let's dissect the speech I was going to give. We've had technical difficulties. Artistic thinking is all about adapting and finding and experiencing the unexpected. And frankly, I don't think my speech was going to be that good. There are some deep thoughts, and putting them into 10 minutes beyond my skill set. The structure I made for this, what is traditional sort of approach to a task. I had a goal in mind, I had a speech to give on a specific subject, and there's a structure to giving a speech. I had an opening line, something jokey, then I had definition, then I had theory, I had some anecdotes and analogies riddled in there, and we're gonna go through all of that nonsense. And this, I think, is more fun and is more descriptive of what artistic thinking is. So I'm going to wing it. My opening jokey line was going to be, art is about imagination and consciousness, and those are two things we don't understand at all. That is all, thank you for your time. Insert laughs. That was gonna be my icebreaker, and I was gonna move on to my essay. I have 7 minutes, 45 seconds, which means this has been gamified. Can I finish this impromptu speech in the time given? These are some conceptual interfaces going on here that are thematically consistent. This is wonderful. Artistic thinking in practice. And my definition, I was going to start with how to define art. And my go-to thing when people ask me to define art is a bit worn out, is being used by others maybe. I was thinking of art as a language of expressing things that we don't have words for. A language being this actually. Okay, let's go to the actual speech. Language is a structured system of symbols. It's a mechanism that enables abstract thought. It's a mechanism that gives birth to consciousness. This is all very profound and deep. And this is my jumping off to point, saying like art is language for expressing things that can't be expressed by conventional means. Now I'm repeating myself, but this is again artistic thinking in practice, unexpected outcomes. And art is also about creating meaning, creating symbols, and this is the definition bit. Actually, I might read this out. This bit might be actually good. we have this conventional idea of art being the expression of the individual. Oh, 6 minutes, 18 seconds. But well, the problem with improvisation is I might get stuck with something, sort of like a choppy sound. Art conveys things we don't have words for, creating symbols for a language expressing the inner truths of the human condition, its limits, and maybe more importantly, what exists or could exist beyond those limits. And like all languages, it evolves, and as it evolves, it becomes a testament to what and who we are and who we were, how we evolve and change. After all that, after all, what we remember from all great civilizations that have ever existed is their art. And, you know, we have an idea that art is something profoundly human. That's a carrying theme. But the bit about art creating meaning, and that's sort of where game development and artistic thinking comes together. Our culture sort of commodifies everything at a tremendous speed. And nowadays, artists are usually seen as entertainers, and art has been sort of reduced to being entertainment. Games for the longest time were seen as nothing more than an entertainment, but now we sort of understand them as an art form itself. And here I go to a lot of thinking about what makes games art, what makes great games, what makes those great games art. And still need to sort of learn to relax, because this is now a performance. Whether I succeed or fail, you know, I'll still have my day job. But this is sort of artistic thinking in practice. Me panicking, trying to struggle to make a cohesive presentation. I mean, okay, let's actually leave this completely on the side. I've played a lot of games that have moved me. I've been emotionally moved by games. I've been stimulated by games. Games have engaged my imagination. I remember playing Monkey Island 2 as a kid and laughing out loud when that monkey jumps out of the jungle. I don't know who knows the reference or not. Heroes of Might and Magic 3, people who are under 50 but over 30 instantly recognize it when I play on my tablet. And props for me to be able to play Heroes of Might and Magic on my tablet. I can explain to you on the chat how to do that. But that was visually engaging. There was something about those games that continue to draw you in. I don't know, Dead Space 1, I love that. The other Dead Spaces I couldn't care less for. But it's about storytelling, it's about the aesthetics, it's about all those things coming together. And all of those things are intangible. I mean, you can have AAA graphics, you can have, actually there's a bit about this in this speech. Only 3 minutes. Okay, hopefully it's a good bit, because I'm gonna read it straight from here. Yeah. Oh, well, this is a wonderful line. The intersection of is the human experience. What makes great art and great games. Dead air. This is not good. Thank you. Chuckles from the audience. Oh, more chuckles from the audience. This gives me a little bit of confidence, except I have 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Yeah, art is about the human experience, things that relay our inner meaning, and games that impact us latch onto that same thing. Whether it be any aspect of the games, it requires artistic thinking. It requires something intuitive, something that isn't simple and task, or something that hasn't a defined goal, something you can't plan for. Artistic thinking is about experimentation, be it a failed experimentation like my speech right now might be, but it's about finding that unexpected thing, finding that thing that resonates. And you can't find that thing before you encounter it on a personal, visceral level. That's why when you develop a game, I mean, there is whether it be the art, whether it be the storytelling, and even the game mechanic, when it connects, it tickles your imagination, engages your imagination. it makes you invested in it. That brings it into the sphere of art. And those are abstract, subconscious, and intangible things that only the language of art can sort of approach, things that we can't get a clear grasp of, and that's sort of where you need artists. Naturally, have artists who can write better speeches than I can. And there are artists who can do better performance than I can do. But oh my God, this is how it feels to die on stage. Thank God I never tried stand-up comedy. But no, I got 25 seconds. I had like a whole bunch of anecdotes and quotes. I was gonna say something from Chuck Close. There's gonna be Alan Moore. There's gonna be a whole bunch of things. But this I guess is a demonstration of the human experience. And maybe it's a failure of artistic thought to give a good speech, but it's a demonstration of artistic thought. Accept failure, accept experimentations. I can go over by like 15 seconds after this. We had so much time with the sound. Try, experiment, throw away your speech at the last minute and fail at giving it to a live audience. But at the same time, you create something humane, something relatable. I mean, I bet everyone here has failed at something. Everyone here has probably failed at public speaking if you have to do that horrible thing. But, you know, it creates a relatable experience, and that's what makes good games memorable. Try, fail, have a genuine experience. Fuck, I could say, I was allowed to swear. I was gonna start off by saying, fuck this speech. And that was gonna be a cheap manipulation to get like people's attention. That was gonna be an artistic choice, but it was what it was. I've gone over time by like 30 seconds, but you know, that was, thank you.
What if we would have a game where there is no shooting but only defending, just like in human interaction? Allt Zone, a mobile game and a work of art. The human mind is like a stone castle, encircled by protective walls. These walls are built to shield the castle's king, the ego, from emotional forces arising in interaction. Yet the walls alone are insufficient to protect this fragile ego. Additional lines of defense are needed. When defenders lose their strength within the field of interaction, the walls are left exposed, allowing emotional forces to reach them without resistance, wearing the stone down until it crumbles. It's time to choose your defense. Anorexia, depression, sleepiness, joking, nitpicking, self-harm, legalism, projection, intellectualizing, overeating. In Ego Clash, two teams of opposing lines of defense protect their stone walls from an emotional force projectile that bounces between them. Each team is controlled by two players who must interact and coordinate to hold the defense. Behind the stone wall lies the interiors of the soul castle, the shared space of identity, inhabited by multiple players. Here, furniture is not merely decoration. but classifications through which a shared identity is constructed and rearranged each season. Chat is a designed interaction system. The player selects an emotion for each message, making effect visible in speech. In clan chat, you represent yourself. In language chat, your clan. In global chat, your country. As interaction scales outward, identity becomes increasingly collective. ALT Zone asks whether a community can raise its members when responsibility is shared by all. In ALT Zone, the clan operates democratically through open voting. Decisions are made in public view, revealing how power and opinion form through mutual visibility. Certain roles allow members to act without a formal vote. Yet this authority is delegated by the clan and remains grounded in its democratic structure. The clan acts together. Some play on the field of interaction, some trade, some carry out raids, and others shape the soul castle. Everyone has their role. A victory or defeat does not belong to a single player. It raises or lowers the clan's total score. The clan's money, rewards, and property are shared. In Alt Zone, success is not an individual achievement. It is a collective outcome. Alt Zone is a mobile game and a work of art. If its artistic mission succeeds, players may come to understand themselves and others more deeply. We protect ourselves from emotions, sometimes out of necessity, sometimes too much. Alt Zone does not preach a new society. It builds a small one and lets players inhabit it. We need one another to succeed. Victory, loss, and ownership are shared within a transparent democracy. With love.
Hi, I'm Ansa Allt, and I'm here to present our pilot project, Extraterritory. Since last fall, I have been writing and designing this idea for a game that has now turned into this project on including artists and artistic vision to the earliest parts of game design. We wanted to see how this would affect and push forward the design and early concept of the game.
One of the challenges in game development is how easily realism begins to limit thinking. If a game is set on another planet, why should it still repeat familiar logic? In this project, I am particularly interested in the scale of the human figure within an unfamiliar environment, a character who does not belong to that world. That disproportion is my artistic starting point. For me, art is not about direct explanation, but about merging different observations and perspectives into one.
When the world is unfamiliar to the player, I believe the soundscape must also carry that sense of unfamiliarity. When the game world is set beyond Earth, I am interested in creating new sounds and timbres that do not yet exist. I do not mean merely unusual effects, but a sonic language that does not directly refer to any familiar instrument or cultural framework.
I am especially drawn to 3D because it combines many elements: drawing, constructing space, choosing light, and framing. In 3D, you can literally place a world and decide what the player sees. Ideas often begin with a simple question. When I think about time shifts or time loops, I choose one idea and start developing it further. I do not know everything at the beginning. For me, it is more important to ask how something works, what it causes, and how far it extends. Is it a small spatial phenomenon, or does it affect the logic of the entire world?
Games create a particular tension. The player controls the character, yet the character has their own narrative arc. In a time loop structure, there can be situations where the player knows more than the character, or vice versa. That creates tension, but it requires careful balance so the character doesn't feel inconsistent with the player's actions. Through role analysis, the character is no longer just a technical entity, but an agent with a past, a position, a profession, and goals. It forces me to ask, what does this character know? What do they believe? What do they fear? How do these aspects appear in movement, rhythm, and in their spatial relationship to the environment?
Where the camera is placed, what the player sees, and how the controls feel have a huge impact on what playing the game feels like. Even a small change in perspective or movement can transform the entire experience. For me, artistic thinking means not asking first how something works, but what it means. Only after that do we consider how it can be implemented technically. There is no neutral code. Every technical choice shapes how the player experiences the world.
I never experience music as neutral. It establishes a perspective and guides the player's state of mind.
At the same time, the character does not exist in isolation. They take shape in relation to the world, the game mechanics, and the genre. This project has taught me that 3D is not just about modeling. It's a way of making a character's thinking visible, when technical and artistic work move forward together.
Developing my own expression is based on recognizing effective examples and building on them.
In collaboration, I value honesty. It is important that someone dares to say if an idea does not work or if the direction is wrong. Not everything needs to be justified at length, because over-explaining can disrupt the process. In artistic work, speaking impulses out loud is valuable, and you should not fear others' reactions. The role of an artist in a game project is to offer alternatives.
Exposing an unfinished idea for many people to see is uncomfortable, and I would have preferred to write more before opening it up like this. I don't regret it, however. It's been really beneficial for me and the concept. Working like this, you have to step out of your comfort zone, but it is worth it for creativity and it moves the idea forward. It also requires flexibility. You can't go completely according to your own preferences, and you have to be able to take other people's ideas into account, even when it's your story.
An idea should not be locked too early. It needs time to remain unfinished and in motion. When I draw, the thought is not fully formed in advance. The line thinks at the same time as the hand moves. The real work happens in that unfinished state, in a quiet space where I listen and observe before I know where I am going. This is also why artificial intelligence interests me only to the extent that it creates space for thinking. It can remove repetition, but it cannot replace the moment in which an idea takes shape through making. My sense of being an artist pulses in silence. This project has reinforced for me that freedom does not arise from boundlessness, nor from rigid constraints, but from a bounded playground.
The artistic side is more difficult for me because the why often only becomes clear through doing. Uncertainty is part of the process. That's why I've learned to value clear core questions at the beginning of a project, and the importance of discussing direction together early on.
Through this project, I have also learned to trust myself more. I joined without a formal background in game programming and quickly realized that I can learn and do much more than I thought. Because of all these, I've begun to see how programming directly shapes how a game feels, what it communicates, and how the world opens up to the player.
The rush schedule of this trial has been hard on our artists, and towards the end of our deadline, they've had increasing difficulties forcing creativity. I haven't been immune to this either, and my writing pace has stalled. In the gaming industry, professionals have long talked about the issues of such crunch periods. And while this has been just a light version of it for our last few weeks, we're absolutely feeling the effect. I wish to leave this talk with the advice to everyone that when you have an idea, write it down, even if just for fun. Sometimes, when you play around with it, it starts to grow and become something you can present to others, and maybe even something you get to work with in the future. Or to make it your own palace of imagination. Thank you.
My name is Pavloff-Pelkonen. I'm a philosopher of education and PhD researcher of educational sciences, and also co-founder and learning designer of Psyche gaming. So before I begin, a brief word about my position. I am in my nature a philosophical thinker, and by practice a PhD researcher studying game literacy in school, and by hobby an enthusiastic player of board games, sports, digital games, all kind of games. And in private life, a husband of an intelligent woman and a father of a blended family. And these positions shape and inform how I understand designed environments, interactive engagement, and learning in general, flowing into this presentation as well. And for this presentation, I have chosen an unorthodox method for presentation to read from a prepared manuscript. I have chosen this as it allows needed conceptual precision in a limited time frame, enhancing my possibilities to be understood correctly. I have also utilized generative AI visualization in a few selected slides as conceptual scaffolding, as I do not possess advanced graphic design skills nor the resources to commission visual work for this talk. Hence, in this context, this tool affords me to externalize meanings that would otherwise remain only verbal. As for rhetorical devices, I will use intended repetition and contrast to sharpen the argument and hopefully make it more graspable. So, what kind of time we inhabit? I think we live inside acceleration, where content competes for milliseconds of our attention. And media doesn't require commitment, but exposes us to rapid micro-reward cycles. Swipe, scroll, next. Attention becomes fragmented and experience shallow, and we can already see the effects of this media in various planes of our society. And this kind of media can be conceptualized as feed media that invites us to move, to encounter something new, where the value lies in the next item, where attention is disposable, content replaceable, in the never-ending stream where progress equals speed through quantitative movement. In contrast, deep media invites us to stay, to perceive our environment, where value lies in engagement to be invested on, where systems unfold through accumulated lived experience, and progress equals understanding through qualitative movement. Feed rewards response, and deep rewards presence. Well, what kind of media are games then? They don't want to be swiped, usually. They demand participation, they invite active decision making, and you cannot progress without attentive engagement. But games can also end up functioning like a meaningless feed when the system is designed and engaged only as a reward dispenser and not as a world to be perceived. Therefore, to sharpen the contrast, we could say that feed gaming is surface interaction and deep gaming systemic perception, blind repetition versus aware engagement. But who then is responsible for whether a game becomes a medium for fast feeding or deep meaning? The designers, the players? I think the answer is both, as design can encourage depth, but players also choose how they engage. Both bring power to the table, and together they create something in between. A space of agency where the game truly happens. And this in-between space of emergence is what we might call intra-action. Not interaction between two fixed things, but a dynamic force field that becomes through actualization. Today my aim is to describe how the player participates in the construction of this space, and how this process that I'm calling dwelling can be understood as an art of gaming. Now, a game doesn't really exist until someone plays it right. Of course, to some degree, we could say this about any signifying system, but there is, however, an ontological difference with games in relation to other arts, since they require active decision-making to unfold. Painting hangs, film runs, but game waits. As a system of potential waiting to be realized, while play is the process of actualizing this potential. But how can we transpose this process of gaming into the sphere of artistic experience? And here we turn to the concept of dwelling, which is the construct I'm building upon the idea of artistic experience of gaming. And by dwelling, I mean here an active space of becoming, a relationship with the world through various qualities. And through a synthesis of art philosophy, we can describe 4 modes of this dwelling, which I have named immersion, configuration, reflection, and reconfiguration, forming this cyclic pathway to qualitative relationship with the world or media that we engage with. Immersion stems from phenomenological tradition. It relates play as a thick mode of being with the world through perceptive readiness, encountering these lived experiences as such. Configuration, on the other hand, stems from structural and hermeneutic traditions, and this is a mode of layered distancing where art is seen as representation of encoded human values or lived experiences to be decoded in relation to the symbolic structure of the work. This can be understood as an active process of configuration of the artwork's composition. And reflection stems from the vast body of intellectual work concerning thinking, evaluation, and taste. It's the culmination point of structuralist interpretation and starting point of post-structuralist deconstruction, working toward the tension between the world and self. Now, reconfiguration here means the readiness to transform, to become in relation to the deconstructed configuration. Now, in the following slides, I try to illuminate these modes more precisely one by one. So, immersion, the first mode of dwelling, the becoming with the world. It is this unhurried attunement where you begin to feel the rhythm, the flow of the system. Your actions start to resonate with its responses. And this is the stage of lingering exploration of the game's potential, to synchronize with it. Meaning is localized and situated, manifested within the game's domain. This is the home of lived experience. It's about feeling the world, the dwelling of belonging. Configuration is the second mode, beginning with awareness to structures encoded in the surroundings. And here you step slightly back, not to exit the experience, but to see the connections. You begin to recognize patterns, how mechanics relate to narrative, how systems encode values, how the world holds together. This is not detachment, but dwelling through systemic perception. Third mode of dwelling is reflection, seeing yourself in relation to the world. And reflection is a kind of turning point where the question shifts from what kind of world I'm inhabiting to what is my relation to this world. In reflection, the mapped system becomes a mirror. You notice your way of playing, your interpretations, your assumptions. You begin to develop your own taste. This is where awareness develops into self-awareness. Whereas configuration revealed the world, reflection reveals one's relation to it. The fourth mode is reconfiguration, where you let the reflection shape you. It is carrying this distilled knowledge forward, learning from it, changing perspective, the practice of active becoming. Here the experiences are not something you had, but something you can engage with to reorganize how you perceive the world, how you read system, how you inhabit them, how you affect them and are affected by them. It doesn't have to be a dramatic change, it can be a minor reorientation, reshaping your relation to the world. So to conclude, play emerges the field of potential. Immersion attunes us to feel it. Configuration perceives its connective structure. Reflection reveals our relation to it. And reconfiguration reshapes how we become with the world. And from the standpoint of artistic experience, I think it is important to live through all these developments. Because feeling without any distance eventually turns to inward cycle of addictive confluence. Whereas distance without reflection conforms to introjective knowledge without understanding. Reflection without transformation turns to self-awareness without actual change. And transformation without feeling becomes ideology detached from lived experience. Now I would like to, for the end here, to present the elaborated model of dwelling with games. So, as said, first you gotta lose yourself in the game by attuning to its rhythm, to feel it. The form of immersion, of course, depends on the game design, player profile, and skill level, but you nevertheless need sufficient operational game literacy to move within the system through situated meaning making. And after that, immersion may flow into mechanical or narrative features depending on previously mentioned variations. Player with a curiosity to see beyond action can take momentary distance from this flow to perceive its structure. Now, it's this slight stepping back, not to exit the game, but to see how it holds together while staying situated. And when coherence of the design holds the interest of the player, patterns of meaning start to emerge, such as how mechanics relate to representation or how actions encode values. Hence, configuration is not detachment, it is systemic perception. And after the map of meaning is configured, a new question arises for the reflective mind. What does this mean to me? Reflection of the emerging configuration of meaning require relational distance to reach the space of reflection where one begins to wonder. How am I playing and why? And what does it say about me? Do I like the game or not, and why? This is where taste, evaluation, and subjectivity emerge, marking the vantage point where play can extend into value beyond the domain of games too. The design can orient toward this through productive friction, such as challenging the player to wonder about values of life through game mechanics or by breaking the third wall through narrative devices. Now, to make the reflection matter, it is important that the designed system and our minds enable enough plasticity for reconfiguration in practice. Otherwise, we may be left as prisoners of our own thought loops within and beyond the game. Instead, we want to reshape our perception to explore new and better ways of becoming with the world, which is the backbone of growth and understanding, in my opinion. The cycle of dwelling is fulfilled when insight is integrated into practice. And we re-enter the world transformed. In terms of life, we probably need not to speak about the endless depth it offers for the integration of understanding, but in the context of games, this naturally requires layered playability and recursive depth from the design system. So here we are, back at the start of the cycle, ready to immerse ourselves once again, but with a bit deeper relationship with the world or game that we inhabit. Therefore, I would like to invite you to rethink how we talk about gaming and game design. Designing not only mechanics, but effective choreographies of fabricated reality. Not only systems, but maps of encoded values. Not only challenges, but frictions that invites reflection. Not only outcomes, but plasticity allowing transformation. And not only replayability, but recursive depth enabling meaningful integration of change. We often ask whether games are art or not. But perhaps the more precise question is that how do games become art? Today I have tried to suggest that this occurs not by declaring them as such, but by expanding the quality of engagement between the designer and the player. Dwelling is a constructive stance, shifting us from reactive performance to attuned immersion, systemic perception, reflective wonder, and reorientation through action. Within this dynamic process of meaning-making, gaming transposes into qualitative movement of becoming with the world, which to me is the heart of any artistic experience. That's it for me. Hopefully you were able to grasp some of the ideas I tried to cook up here, and you are more than welcome to connect with me in LinkedIn, and I'm also open to any feedback or extended discussion in the panel session or later through email. Thank you. Be well.
Good evening, Satakunta. Thank you for the invitation to play, for creating a safe space for performance and for failure. Like we heard today, art has a lot to do with things that I associate with play myself, because play is the art of stuff, mess, and wonder. We heard that art is something profoundly human. We could easily say that so is play. And what I'm doing here tonight, this is my day or evening job, being a light bearer of play. I'm interested in how play moves us, how it moves us cognitively, emotionally, in bodily ways. And art is something about experimentation, we also heard, just like play. Let me take you on a journey through my explorations of this subject, because play has moved me in a lot of ways and continues to do so. My title for tonight is Artistic Thinking and Game Development as a Form of Artistic Practice. Wow, that is a lot to say. But I have many examples of my work being a researcher, an artist, something in between, looking at these both worlds, combining them in different ways. Let us surface from the depths of the previous presentation, which took us to these philosophical thoughts that I greatly admire, but won't be doing in my presentation tonight. Because let's face it, we are in Pori, not a shitty thing at all, ei huono. But I've written of my hometown as the game city of the West Coast, and I wrote in a local newspaper why this town should be thinking about a little bit about the expertise that Pori people in themselves have about games and play. They are the experts of playfulness. And in order to attract people's playfulness, an atmosphere that accepts playfulness is needed. In Pori, which has been recognized as a city of games, it is therefore worth investigating in strengthening the emotional intelligence and empathy-based competence closely related to play. This is the main ideas I'm going to address tonight, because I'm interested in what kind of futures we are creating today and how we can be more human in those futures. And this, I believe greatly, can be achieved through play. Because we've seen that sound can be fickle, sound can surprise us, sound can be serendipitous and give us strange reactions. I thought of beginning with a little sound snippet of sorts. It comes from my pocket, actually. Do I see people recognizing the sound of this object I'm pressing now in my pocket? I think so. Because it comes from this game, which is the beginning of my own journey in the world of games. On the right-hand side, you can see my father, Markku. He was 11 years old, playing the Kimball game, actually called Trouble, at the moment when it landed in Finland. They were test playing, but this picture is from the first cover of that game. I'm a big fan of blue color, and it occurred to me in a moment of time that he's actually holding a blue pawn in his hands. This must be why I always need to play with the blue pawns myself as well. So this marks the beginning of the journey that I've taken with games, and this is my grandfather, who started originally the startup company in his garage. I have worked in the same garage myself, but from this story you sense that I am a true material girl, because I will talk about materials, the physicality of games, the spatiality of immersing in various kinds of games. Materials mean a lot to me. I have lived in a factory. Also, I became a lady designer in the industry in a time where there weren't many around, especially in this country. But what has made my journey a bit different is that I've always seen the toyetic in games. I've looked at the toyful, the toy-like in the games we play. And here you can see how I have played it in my own way with all these different organizations. These represent companies, museums, and various gatherings of people interested in the industries of play. But we could also look at my position from another perspective, that from the perspective of art. I've functioned as an art critic for over 20 years here in the region, which has given me tremendous possibilities to look at interactive art that we at many times can also see in games. So games, like art, at its best, is about interaction and togetherness. Here you could see my doctoral theses, and I'll show you them once more. So first I investigated adult toy play in my doctorate for Allt, and later on in another one I looked at how play moves us in terms of play machines, which are so dominant in the field of how we address play today. We use machines to play. We are almost becoming machines ourselves. And it is in this landscape, it is profoundly important to remember that we are not machines, we are human beings, and we should restore that. How do we do that? Well, the journey has also taken me to interesting places, and I'm not your traditional Pori girl who would not take pride in achievements of the past. So I'm very glad to introduce to you my little double doctor who later became a double docent, most recently at the university at Tampere. So I've researched toys and games and play and playful learning, playful spaces, play in leisure, work, and whatnot for a long time. But it's interesting to see where the connection points are between toys and playthings and between games of many of you who are experts here today. So what I think connects my work with games is that I'm very interested in characters, storytelling, and world playing. I have also been one of the first ones to discuss toys in association with adults who play, and been involved in introducing kidultism, which has become a label, not necessarily only a positive one, in the industries of play. To give you a little bit of more perspective on what kind of play experiences a researcher of this kind has touched upon in the past are the examples you can see here. And I consider art being quite a significant part of how I have approached these playthings and play experiences. What is the relationship between toys and games to play then? Well, here you can see a visual mapping of how I see them to connect to each other. in this city, we have tirelessly heard about gamification. We could also be talking about toyification, but I think we can combine this by speaking about playification, and this has to do with, for instance, urban space where we are located now at the moment. And for that reason, it has a lot of connection points to art. How do toys and games and various playthings connect on a theoretical perspective? Well, I've observed in my work that play in general has become a very game-like outside of games, I mean. What has impact on this is, of course, social media. But perhaps most interestingly to me, we can perceive toys and dolls as avatars for today's players. That is also a connection point between toys and games and the way we play with them. Finally, back to the games. I've done research with many colleagues who are primarily game researchers in Finland. And what I want you to look at in this visualization is the conceptualization of the play experience, which is very suitable to be used when we talk and analyze games as well. I started with physical, fictional, functional, and affective, but I've added some dimensions to this list as my research has evolved. What I wanted to mention to you today, that we've overcome this period in world history where we were quite isolated, and this continues to impact us. But this was truly a wonderful moment where we learned a lot about open-ended play and how people actually come up with play patterns outside of produced games by themselves that made a huge impact globally. And I'm talking about pandemic toy play and particularly about the Teddy Challenge. Many of you might remember how Teddies were displayed in windows, and this became a global viral play pattern. And this example continues to inspire me because it tells so much about our desire to do things together through these play formats, to interact with objects that some might consider trivial, but which I see as objects of resilience as well. So they are meaningful. And I've even gone to the distance of taking this analysis of mine into looking at this kind of engagement and interaction as toy activism. And today, more than ever, we can see play as a political act as well. And there's great power in that. Then there are different kinds of power that make us move. There are viral toy phenomena in the world that perhaps cannot be repeated as they have approached this status of viralness. They come and go, but we can learn something from them. And this ties with my research on character toys. Character toys have a face and a story, which in the case of Labubu are ambiguous. They are blockbuster toys in general. To understand today's toy phenomena, we must have a multidimensional ability to analyze these kind of playthings through their materiality, playability, and play value, but also through their digital connections, origins, and sustainability. These are quite big questions, considering that the toys are quite small. But what I want to say with this is that we are still human beings who love to fiddle with things. Therefore, the physicality of playthings remains important. So, what I like to add to the dimensions of design and play of physical, functional, fictional, and affective, which to me means empathy with the objects, through the objects, is that play is social and socially meaningful, and it can be temporal. And I coined this term of ludo-unity while I did research on pandemic play, and that means playing for the common good. And this point I want to stress to you today. And some examples as we are approaching the end of the presentation. Before doing so, I wanted to bring with me my master's thesis from the University of Art and Design Helsinki, as it was called back in the days. And this was published, or I got the master's in 2007. And the title really is The Art of Making a Game. And that made me smile because I had not come up with the original title for tonight's talk. But this goes so well with the ideas that we have been hearing about this night, about art, about games, about play. Wolfgang Kramer, who I cite in my work, has said that whoever plays a game does it from his freedom of choice. Playing games is not work, not commitment, nothing you have to do. Therefore, we can say that playing games means being free. This is a lovely quote, and I've addressed freedom to play in my visual art, dealing especially with the themes of toys and war. And we are sadly in a situation where these themes are still lingering around heavily. I have made games artified experiences as I live in the factory, as I walk through it. My eyes are open, I glance at all kinds of parts that could be turned into artified experiences, but they have their origin in games. I'm also interested in the intersections of urban art, interaction design, mobile games, and toyified art. And with my colleague Pirita Ihamäki, I've created secrets here in Pori. But I've done other kinds of installations. This was in the beginning of the pandemic, where the 1st of May couldn't be celebrated as usual. So I asked the people at UC Pori, could I please fasten my 99 balloons in the windows to cheer people up? This is very low threshold play activism in a way, but it's still something. It's a gesture of inviting people to play. I've written children's books. I've written the history of our company, family company Tactic Games, as a playified book or a game book filled with playified experiences. I've worked with cubes and cardboard for a very long time. They are endlessly inspiring, and I also use them in my teaching. How about making art a game? I have examples of that before we close this presentation tonight. So I'm the curator of an artist collective called Peak Experience. We do toyified and playable art inspired by Twin Peaks, the television series. And I've done research on this as well, interviewing my other fellow artists and how they see this entrepreneurship to develop through our cooperation. As said, I'm interested in interaction design because you never know what happens when people are let to engage with everyday objects in strange places. I've kept my eyes open where in Pori I can showcase my art, and those would be galleries and other places, even buildings that do not anymore exist. So I think we should always remember that the play experiences are multi-dimensional. And let's not forget about Ludo Unity, playing for the common good when we design any kind of playable experiences. Finally, I just love boxes. I love to open them, I love to close them, and this is an invitation to you all. If you come to think about anything we could do together in terms of cubes, I'm all ears. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Hello everyone, it is a pleasure being here, and thank you IGDA Satakunta for having me at Creative Crossroads this year. My name is Natasha Skult, and I will be telling you more about how to build a memorable IP through art direction. Now, since this is 10-15 minutes long talk and I teach this, and also this is literally something that I breathe and live as a topic, I will really try to go straight to the point. So let's just simply dive into. So first of all, why games? And how do we approach that in games, since games are interactive mediums? So they are completely different in the way of more traditional ways of artistic production, which is like artists produces something, gives out to the world reacts to it, positive, negative, doesn't matter. It can be also just personal tastes and so on. So a lot of different things affect the whole appreciation or acceptance or whatever it is, like basically criticism. But in games are breaking that bridge of monologue that artists usually have. So in games we have a dialogue where, and again, for the sake of simplicity here, I will call just saying game designer, but it's a whole game dev team. It's basically a dialogue between a game designer and a player in a way that designer is basically arranging things around in a way that they would like player to experience certain things. But player will do their own stuff in their own way, no matter how much we guide them or we want them to do it certain way. So it is a dialogue there, and the player is also creating not just own experience as such, but it's also very important part, which is really giving us designers and art directors really big responsibility, is that through a gameplay we are creating very meaningful memories. And these memories stay with us as literally something that we have lived. So if I ask you, for example, here's Mario, like, how did your Mario go? Let's say you were playing. So nobody is ever going to ask, oh, my Mario was jumping around, kicking turtles and saving princess. You would most likely say, oh, I did this and that. I achieved, I collected this, I saved the princess. So it's very emotionally connecting and engaging. But also, it's not enough in the mechanic, and it's not enough to have cool graphics. It has to really click. It really has to be on emotional level of why players should care. Because when you think about this, we are not at all necessarily even competing when you think of a market within the other games. We are competing with this free time. Like, is someone gonna doom scroll or play our game? So basically, it's a completely different way of approaching also. Why should someone really sit down and play your game and not do anything else basically in their free time? So to address that, especially this is more game design related, but it is, again, that's where the art direction is rooted, because you can't direct how something should be looking without the game design of what it should represent. So basically art direction follows the game design. So that's why I have to address this in the very beginning. And I want to remind everyone that because of what I've just said, it is the player. Everything happens in the player's head, no matter what we give them, fancy schmancy stuff, or even simplified things, very indie-driven kind of like experience on the screen. But their personal memories are being created. And our job is to give them these building blocks in creating these memories. So now, how do we treat art direction when it comes to different projects? Obviously, different genres, different platforms will require different kind of adjustments. So there are lots of moving parts regarding it. But I like to use with my students usually this example. So pretty much the visual storytelling, us, especially as humanity, as how we evolve, and we are constantly still evolving. Like the evolution is not just stopping somewhere. We are still, like now our brain is completely mushed with TikTok and whatnot. So, how much we can actually concentrate and so on is really different, and communicating to people nowadays is way different than even 5 years ago or even 10 years ago and so forth. So the point here is that it has to, of course, be very connected to what you are building. What is it that you need to say? What is the word? What is basically the world that you're building in its own, like from the big picture into the details? And for all of that, there's nothing really new. We are still using the same building blocks for visual storytelling as the great masters, or as even the cavemen, when you think about it. So basically, shape language and color theory are your best friend there. And on top of that, like even better friend, like the best the bestest friend, would be light. Because even with the same setting that you have, whatever it is, even in the game engine or whatever, just changing the lighting, playing around with the light settings will completely change the story, the atmosphere, and so forth. So light, especially coming from a goth, it's a really, really important and heavy emphasis on light as an artist and art direction. So basically, shapes and colors are your tools, how you would be approaching pretty much any project, and I will give some examples very soon. Now, when we talk about the business, obviously, it goes into, it's very common, and also the kind of like being this recognizable, that everyone knows what you are doing, like what project you're, like which game is actually even belonging to which maybe studio, because some studios have very particular way of expression and so forth. So it becomes branding, obviously. And the brand now, when we think about branding, I would like you to at least take this into your own aspect as, could your game be recognizable even if there is no logo of it or any name kind of written down? Can it be recognizable? So think about Mario. Think about World of Warcraft. Think about all big Zelda, like all big franchises, Lara Croft and so forth. Like every single one have their very distinct visual direction that represents who, like literally what that franchise is, like an IP, which again is all about shapes and colors, which again, we see that in branding and marketing, like all that. That's literally how it works. Now, I will give you an example because, again, very limited time. I'll give you an example of our latest product, Willow Guard, which we are now launching in few months DLC. So here is just a little teaser of the DLC. But basically, in the game, you play as a badger witcher. That's as simple as it can go of what the game is about. And game has a very particular illustrative, so it has two modes, narrative and dungeon mode. In the narrative mode, it's very distinct, illustrative, kind of like comic kind of art style, illustrative approach, while in the dungeons is pixel art. So basically a bit of nostalgia of, kind of JRPGs and old school dungeon crawlers and so on, but again, it in its own very specific way, and again, what this game needed as its own product. But then as we were developing, and we are still developing, obviously, this IP in various ways, cross-platform and cross-media, so we also did, together with Feeling Good Films, a graphic novel. So here you have, for example, a graphic novel representing the characters from the game. And then on the very right, you have comic strips, our weekly, very simple, kind of like funny little strips that we post every week. Now, when we were deciding, besides, like, I'm not going to show you our art Bible and so on that we have, especially for licensing and so forth, because we are having a lot of merch and a lot of new stuff that we are working on. There is board game coming. There is another graphic novel. We are also negotiating animated TV series, but lots of stuff in the making. But in a nutshell, just to give you kind of how to even approach. So here is what we did. Ta-da! As simple as it goes. So basically, Gveros, as our main protagonist, as the willow guard that you play in the game, this is basically the shape that he represents. So basically, doesn't matter now. Now, if we go back, doesn't matter, is he in the game? Is he also pixel or whichever version? Is he in graphic novel? And here as well in the comics? The simple shape plus the colors, he has specific colors. And very specific features of beard and having a braid. Actually, he has a braid in the back, and 2 swords and so on. So basically, these recognizable things are something that, and scars are something that, but as a shape, that even in the smallest, if we would make a mobile game, he would be still recognized different from any other character, even if everything would be black and white. So other willow guards, Zarar, here you see that he is more of a rhomboid. So this is also something that we have in different. Then there is Bog Witch or Swamp Witch Gnosmi. She's more of this sort of like triangle-y character. And again, I'm not going to go into this whole meanings of the shapes and so forth, because I'm sure you already know. And Ray, our little scholar, she is very rounded. So that is also something that represents that. And then we have Merchant, for example. So these are just examples. We have for every single character very specific shape language, which again can be adopted now into whichever other medium, because we want to, now if I go slightly back, we want that every medium that we create new products with, that they correlate also in the expanding the world of Willowguard that we are building into something memorable. And it doesn't matter now is someone gamer or not. Maybe they will like something else from the other things. Like we also even made a really, really wonderful and thick coloring book, for example, for adults. And to show you that even she's Badger as well as Veros, Ajati, our smith, she has a slightly different so there's kind of like more like adjustments to here. So sure, she's also a Badger, but she has her own also shape language to be very distinct from Veros, even though they both have also braids and whatnot. So with this very simple, very quick like showcasing, I just want you to think more of the overall world we're building, of the literally characteristics of every single character and who they are and what makes them, again, pretty much the same as these logos. Sorry, just literally, just like this, that wherever they would be, no matter where on the screen and so on, you always know who is who. And again, doesn't matter which even media we are representing them in. And as a takeaway, it is really important to listen to the audience, to listen to also your product, because again, your product is its own living being. And also the direction can adjust, but it's mostly the pillars, arranging the pillars, the visual pillars, just like game design pillars, to be something that would guide you, and also making sure that you don't go into some really weird directions. And always approach it like, okay, if we remove the logo, if we remove anything that would say this is Willowguard, will that be recognizable? Again, as an example. And the whole point of this is that art direction is not just, oh, pretty pictures. It's the whole strategy. So please treat it as a strategy. Don't just do something because it's, or someone does this style and now we need to do it because it's trendy. That's a different story. Please do listen to your product, listen to your story of that product. And when it comes to creating this on the long term, because again, it's not just something that you do as a one-time thing, it becomes a service, it becomes its own living being. And that's why continuity, regardless now of the medium you end up doing in any kind of transmedia strategy you might have, please focus on that sort of continuity in which that is what creates this memory, that one remembers it from whichever other. Think about Disney. They are the masters of creating very memorable stories, characters, everything. Because once there is an emotion, the emotions are the ones that create that attachment to the brand that you're creating. And I mentioned for a second trends, even social media trends and whatever. Listen, trends fade. Especially in this current state of social media and the whole AI lunacy that's happening and whatnot. Just please focus on the world building, value your story, value your product, and it has to be reflecting to the human that should be interacting with your product. So when you think about, I said that Willowguard is Badger Witcher. So when you think about Witcher, what represents Geralt? What is Geralt as an icon? He represents a lover and the father as a city, father father figure. In our case, well, Gueros is not a lover. He's neurotic. That's what he is. So he's neurotic badger. And now in DLC, he's also becoming a father, nothing to do with Geralt. It's something that he's actually getting a cub to be apprentice and so forth. So there is that correlation as well. So something that one can relate as a person outside of just, cool graphics, cool effects, whatever else there might be. So please, no matter what you do, treat this as a strategy, not just as one-time thing or, again, prettiness. It has to have function for a much bigger emotional engagement of the audience, no matter where your audience is. Again, even culturally or regionally and so forth. And with that said, thank you once again for having me. Remember that you are not alone. Now that you're here at IGDA Satakunta, also generally there are so many different organizations in the regions, like different regions. Now in Turku we have Turku Game Hub. Of course, jamming is a big part of community of like-minded people and sharing knowledge and so forth. And of course, we love games, which I warmly welcome you as well to join as being part of us who love to play and make games. And with that said, don't be a stranger. I'm more than happy to get in touch, connect, and discuss more with which way more time. As said, there is plenty more. This is just barely scratching the surface. So thank you for having me and have amazing rest of the evening. Bye.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. And I'm going to start here. Also, if you're hearing the microphone bumping and bouncing, that's going to be part of the planned presentation. I'm going to start with a question. How many of you have had an idea that you never acted on? Raise a hand. More, yes, thank you. Probably wasn't because it was bad, right? It was probably a good idea, but the main reason I would bet was because you weren't sure or you weren't ready for it. Raise a hand if that was the case. Sometimes it can be really a bad idea, and that's okay. But most of the time, it's because you weren't ready or you felt unsure about that. Maybe in some cases, when it comes to job applications, you thought that somebody else was more qualified to do it. Maybe if there was a promotion happening, you thought somebody else should get it because they're more qualified to do it. There is a small space between idea and an action where most of these opportunities just disappear. They never come to life. There is a Finnish company called Futurist that I personally really like. They have a slogan that has stayed with me for many years. Love the problem, not the solution. My name is Violeta Ivanova. I'm the chairman of Pori Entrepreneurship Society, and we have built a whole community that loves to take action in solving problems. And problems are many, and especially nowadays. We have entered this future work stage in life, and also today there were plenty of very well scripted presentations. I am not one to script them. I have a couple of notes, but we're just gonna go with the flow today, since it's a few minutes left anyway. But we are entering this kind of future of work situation where everything looks very different from the type of future that we were prepared for in study, or the type of future that our parents were used to doing. When it comes to careers, they're more flexible, and I promise this will make sense. They're more flexible, they're more project-based, there's different kind of roles that are being combined, there's different industries that are blending and different skills that are required. Companies are not the same either. There isn't anymore this idea that you would study something, enter the workforce, and work on that same job and same task, perhaps maybe climb the ladder a little bit, and then happily retire when it's your time. That is no longer the case. It's ever evolving. Teams are smaller, problems are more complex, and the change is constant. In this kind of environment, stability, which most people are seeking, is really hard to find. That is why many people in the working life are actually struggling nowadays. And it all has to do with your ability to adapt. How well are you at adapting? How well are you at reframing? How good are you at creating value? This is where artists come into place, and all kinds of tasks and ways of thinking that artists can bring to the table. In many cases, it's considered that art is this aloof, abstract thing that is often unemployed by choice in many cases, like the starving artist image. However, nowadays it's becoming more and more common that we do need those skills because engineers are struggling, because the work is no longer mathematical problem that needs solving. In some cases it is, but once in a while they will be asked into a sales meeting and struggle because I'm an engineer, I don't do sales, why am I here? How do I convince this person to buy my product because my Excel sheet is not really sexy right now, so what am I supposed to do? They don't want to buy that. So we need artists to make things sellable in a way, to make ideas come to life. And in traditional problem solving, it's usually asked, what is broken and how can we fix it efficiently? But employment today, that's why we're in this situation right now, because you can't solve it with that way of thinking. It doesn't just go to people with knowledge as it used to. Your CV doesn't really matter anymore, because there are 1,000 other people with the same amount of skill and with the same diploma. So how are you going to stand out instead of them? How are you going to get the job instead of them? Funding doesn't go to ideas sitting in notebooks either. Impact does not come only from thinking, but it needs visible action. So thinking about something that you complain about regularly, just have a little thought experiment. Maybe it's student life, if we have students here. Maybe it's mental health. Maybe it's how difficult it feels to enter the job market. And I'm talking about work because it's springtime, and that's what everybody's on about right now, the employment. How do we get jobs? Artists have been chronically suffering from unemployment, sometimes on purpose, sometimes not. But thinking about something that you like to complain about, and imagine treating that frustration as an opportunity instead of a complaint. I'm from the Balkans. We love to complain. We complain a lot. We complain passionately. We complain all the time. But we also have a thing called the nevola. If you don't do it, nobody else is going to do it for you. So how do we combine these things? We passionately complain about the problem while we're passionately working on a solution, so that we can get out of that situation and we can complain about the next thing. Very fitting right now. Fully embodied in the Body Entrepreneurship Society community. We recognize problems, and through brainstorming solutions, uplifting each other through learning, thinking outside the box and learning collaboration, we try to solve them. How is that in practice? Well, jobs are a problem. Can you host a conversation? Can you do an impromptu event like this one? Can you do a stream? Maybe build a rough digital version of something that you feel like needs solving. If you have the skills, if you don't, ChatGPT can probably help you. Can you gather 3 people and test an idea? Have a dialogue? People don't talk to each other as much anymore, but it's a good idea to start. Small action can become many things at once. It's a project, it's a portfolio piece, you can share it in the interviews, and it can become a case for funding. Even if it fails, that's okay. You have demonstrated initiative, and initiative is employable. Initiative can be purchased. We think of employment as something that we have to apply for. We think of funding as something we have to apply for all the time. Artists need money to continue doing what they do well, right? They do art. But art can also have an impact, and it must have an impact, in my opinion. Increasingly, employment is something that we try to design more than we apply for. Because when you solve a visible problem, you have created value. Not because you waited, but because you acted, you did something about it. There is a saying how 90,000 Finns do good work, then sit in the corner quiet and don't talk about it. They wait for the good results to actually speak for themselves. Then come in 10,000 Swedish people. Then they talk really loudly about the work that they do. And guess what actually gets noticed? It's not the silent work, because that's just what it is. It's silent. So this is a draft, but it exists. It's something that you can showcase, you can talk about. Impact can be powerful. And perfection waits, always. And Finland is a society of perfectionists. I am very sorry, but you guys have a problem with that. You really need to let go a little bit, because momentum is really what attracts. It's not perfectionism. And in lean design, there is a practice of fail fast, and fail again. So I'll leave you with that. If you want employment, if you want funding, solve something, test something. If you want impact, share something. Don't wait to be hired. Don't wait for someone big to purchase that one ticket one big piece of art, do something in the meantime. They might still come, but in the future of work, it's the people who act, even if it's imperfect, but they are the ones who create their own opportunities. So thank you.
All right, and we'll fix it in editing. And now to keep the momentum, our esteemed panelists will answer questions from the chat. And we have a good one to start off with. How can a game be a work of art even if it is strongly commercial? Who wants to go first?
I just talked about don't be a perfectionist. I think this is a very good example. A lot of the games that are commercial success are just fun. They are very nice to play. They're very social. One of the Finnish classics would be the My Summer Car. We can swear. It looks like shit. It plays like shit as well, but it's really fun and people really enjoy it. It's very memeable. So the whole power of memetics definitely work with that. But it's good fun. It's very streamable. It's very interactive. So you absolutely do not need to be perfectionist. AAA games, Bethesda, they are known for releasing half-broken games and people still pay millions for those games multiple times over. Skyrim still has issues from alpha that they will never fix. And I will forever be mad about that. But people still pay millions to do that. So don't let perfectionism stop you from releasing something. Put it out there, see what people say.
And yeah, also I think if this means that there is lots of advertisement or something like that, in this way commercial, I think the gamer can make it artistic experience through dialogue with the work. By reflecting through deconstruction with the game, reflecting the structures that is there. So that's my take through the gaming experience.
In any case, I think that players have agency over the product. So whatever game or play experience it is, gamers, players will make it their own. And if we didn't have commercial successes, how could we then rub against them and be creative in other ways? I think this question is definitely a good one. But I also think that the great mass of people, gamers, players, not every single one of them will make their own games or toys or play experiences for that matter. And there's a vast solution space between what is commercial success and what is an indie product that can be equally interesting.
I like what you said about not being perfectionist, and weirdly enough, I'm trying to profile myself as the erratic artistic type, but I was thinking like being artistically ambitious and commercially viable aren't mutually exclusive. I mean, there are AAA games that are, qualify as works of art. It kind of boils down to like what creative choices were made, and I guess it's a good let's say artistically ambitious AAA games are a good example of artistic thinking taking place. It's sort of I'm a loss of words. It has a creative director who has a clear vision and guides the process. But yeah, all right. Oh, that's right. I'm the moderator. Yeah, and moving on to our next question. We had how does generative AI change the role of artistic thinking in the game industry?
I've understood from my research I've done in academia that we are entering this stage of hybrid intelligence, and people are truly embracing the fact that we have a technological tool that will be there for moments to come, and we learn to live with it by playing with it and seeing, again, stressing what makes us human in terms of comparing us with the technology and the machine. And we must also remember that everything that has been fed into AI has originated in the human mind as well.
Yes, and in terms how it possibly changed the artistic thinking, I think the process of thinking in general, as you said, the hybrid mind in a way that you can utilize it within the ideation, and you still need, and especially need, the creative mind to kind of have all those ideas, but you can use it as a dialogue to enhance some of those ideas, and in the field, in the industry, I think it might take some of the repetition away and free more space for creative thinking. That's one trend, at least, that it's possible that the boring stuff might go there a little bit, and there can be more time for the creation.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I would say that it still requires a human inputting into the AI. So you still need somebody to do the brainstorming behind. It's a tool, use it or not. It's up to you, but it can be of huge help.
On a final note to that, if you may, I think AI literacy is tremendously important for anyone today. So we must think of the tool in critical terms. So I guess that's kind of obvious, but anyhow, it's good to remember that we should be critical of the content that any kind of tool of this kind delivers.
Just with the benefit of starting off with the mic, I'm going to steal your last notes. There's a it might be a line that might have been repeated often, but there was a coder friend of mine who said that generative AI is just that. It's generative. It doesn't create. And even if we reach a point where AI gains agency to be able to create something unique, would it be interesting to us as consumers of content, of culture, of art? Probably at first, but we're still very egocentric as species, and what connects with us is the human experience. We'd still want to hear human stories, and there, I stole the last word, and oh no, I didn't. Good.
Yes, because I was watching these images back here, this creative crossroad thing, and it was interesting to see the transformation from the AI-generated people that are transforming into the faces made by these great artists. So that's also, here we can see the transformation. So it's literally so different, and you can see the personal taste of all the artists. Yeah, just wanted to point that out.
And next up we have, what could the game industry learn from theater, visual arts, music, or film?
Yes, embodied expression and thinking of us as multidimensional beings. I think that might be something that theater has to give. We've heard some improvised parts tonight, and that is the serendipity of life, human bodies solving problems impromptu, creating content that was not expected perhaps, but gave some kind of richness for the moment, and warmth most of all.
Yeah, this is a big question. There is a lot to learn from the previous arts, as you could say. I think Juho Kuorikoski have a great insight on these questions in the Pelitaiteen Manifesti book, where he has figured out all those previous modes of art and discussed them in terms of games. One thing came to my mind. I was thinking about theater and music and the emotions they evoke, and this kind of feeling of presence and the lingering presence. That's something that I would I have felt with games, and I think it's really important to have that kind of feeling of presence through the game mechanics and with the game world. So that's my take on this for the moment.
I'm actually going to have a completely different viewpoint here, because I don't think game industry has anything to learn from theater, music, or any other traditional art. I think they already embody all of that. They need motion cap artists who are typically dancers or theater artists or some kind of performances. They already need visual art to do the actual art of the game, the concept, in some cases maybe sets, promo materials, advertisement, trailers. They already embody voice actors, musicians that bring life to different games. I think the game industry is the culmination of every other art form, and they just can make it in so many different formats that exist in a physical way. Nowadays, we also have different board games that combine this experience of storytelling and visuals through tablets, for example, that are still considered offline experiences, but they're a little bit more alive than just plain deck of cards or a couple pieces on the table. And then we have the whole indie games, arcade games, AAA games, VR games that bring a completely different ways of combining all of these arts, combining different people. And that's why also, in general, in game industry, there is work for everybody, and everybody works together really well because different people are needed to create all of that. So yeah, I don't think they have many things. So I think actually the traditional industries have a lot to learn from games in terms of getting people's attention, retention, interactiveness into the digital world that we live in now. We all fight for attention, like you said in the talks before. So it's no longer enough to have something on stage. To some people it is, but to most it is not. So how are you going to make your story heard? One way is to embody different art forms that make it a little bit more rich experience.
And not to forget about toys and their importance. So I think there's already a lot of dialogue between these worlds of games and toys, particularly if we think about digital games and physical toys, so there's a lot of overlap and boundary breaking in between. But I just wanted to bring that up because toys are neglected as an area of inquiry in terms of academic research and also these kind of happenings. So I'd like there to be more being said about the importance of toys as well.
There's Violeta summed up very nicely how games have sort of taken the visual and the narrative tools of traditional media that have shaped how we perceive visual culture and how we consume, how we understand the visual language and the storytelling, and games utilize all that. But traditional media has sort of struggled to find a way into the digital realm. There are lots of different sort of platforms and I think everyone's sort of seen what a failure metaverse was, and so how to experience art, theater, movies in a new way, how to consume it, or I'm not even sure, do we need to consume it or experience it another way? But one thing that still lacks, I am kind of curious about the aspect of toys, because physicality is an important way of how we experience and interact with the world, and what that is going to look like in the future is going to be kind of interesting for the well, for the whole human experience, I kind of look towards it with some sense of dread. But that's probably going to be one of those next big paradigm shifts that we're going to bump into. And time is running, so let's get to our next big question. Is artistic integrity in conflict with funding and market demands? Is artistic integrity in conflict with funding and market demands?
Right, that's gonna ruffle some feathers, but I think a lot of artists are a bit too proud of their work. So in some cases, they would not display their art in places that they deem subpar or beneath them. I have heard certain comments that people would not want to display their art in a library, even though it's free, because it's not a gallery, so they cannot put it on their CV. So there's a lot of pride involved, and I think the main conflict are misplaced principles and, in some cases, that pride. I think finding the right conditions, the right ways of finding funding that still allow you to get the funding in the end so you can keep doing work is really important. But I think, like earlier you mentioned, a lot of people prefer to do that one big ticket item and then sit and wait bitter for that one person that's maybe going to buy it in the future, rather than trying to find different avenues to bring their idea forward so that then opportunities can come to them. I think that's the main conflict between them.
I'm going to have to moderate the mic back to me. You had a lot of good points, but you're tragically wrong on one point, so I have to react to it. I don't think artistic integrity is in conflict with funding and market demands. But talking about representation of art, it needs, depending on the medium and depending on the work in question, it needs its own context. Context plays into everything, including like displaying of art. There is fundamental problems with how artists see funding and the financial aspect of things as a compromise. I don't think that it is necessarily. I actually wrote something down on this, but aside from that, there is a context and there is a different. I mean, in different mediums like independent films, independent games, they find a way to break through to an established market, and market doesn't really employ artistic thinking. But it recognizes success and it commodifies everything. And in that sense, yeah, of course, there's possibilities for artistic integrity and financial success. Oh, the next question? All right.
There's one.
What does the future game developer look like? A technical expert, an artist, or both?
Well, this is a really tough question. I'm very much looking into the future now and the future of things, the world, the situation, how it's gonna improve for everyone. How does a game designer of the future look like? Who knows? I hope that curiosity will stay with us. Imagination will stay with us regardless of these fancy tools that we have. That open-endedness will stay with us. I hope that optimization will leave us, and I think what we said here earlier touches upon that we cannot have too rigid ideas about what our creations should look like or become, because there's simply so much offer. So trust our intuition, enhance soft skills, and I cannot repeat myself too much tonight about the empathic part of being human, showing warmth and togetherness and embrace that aspect that we simply cannot survive alone. So I hope that the future game designer is not going to be a loner, but instead someone who warmly and willingly cooperates warm-heartedly as well, and most of all is for play.
Yeah, well, I could just close this by saying, in connection to this event, that I could see game developer as an actor standing in these intersections, in this creative crossroads, being this actor that is gathering the collaborative actors from various domains to be together and create. Because as Violeta said, it's kind of culmination points of many arts and many fields of making.
We cannot do it alone.
We ran out of time a moment ago, but do we still have time for our closing question? Good. We have some really delicious comments in the chat, but we have to go with our last question. How can a newcomer to the game industry stand out and get a job in the field? How can they demonstrate their artistic thinking?
In these events.
In these events, apparently.
Yeah, at least. I mean, yeah.
In short, in these events, yes. I think in this current situation that we have with the job markets worldwide, we are consistently seeing more and more people striving for professionalism. And at Pori, we do a lot of CV clinics where we try to help people to go over their CVs and cover letters and stuff like that, and try to get that. People aim to get that one perfect CV, that one perfect portfolio that's automatically going to get them through the door. And then they get frustrated, like, why can't I get this because I have the perfect paper? And the reality is that you still need to sell it. If you don't have those skills, it doesn't matter. So trying to get more skills socially with people. A lot of the jobs these days, it's a lot of talking about how they're hidden jobs. They're not really hidden. We've gone back to how things used to be, that you have a community, and through that community, you're able to find opportunities. So join events, try to join those communities, try to put your work out there, ask people's opinions. Even if it's imperfect, that's okay. But connect with people, and through those opportunities can come. Whether it's a job opportunity, whether a couple of like-minded people decide that let's do a project together and see what happens. Maybe this time we don't get funding, but maybe next time we can. And don't be reaching for that perfectionism.
Shall we ask the Pop-O-Matic, if you will, Ville? Okay, that's not a good one. Shake it a bit. All right, what does it say?
Ratkaise. Solve.
So, once again, it's about solving those wicked problems, but doing it together, right?
And unfortunately, we have to quit now. And I'd love to join in with the comments. We've talked so much about AI, and I feel the need to bash it a little bit as well. But I'll try to do it discreetly in a way that to add my own say to the last question. I think passion and talent and will always be recognized, and that is something that AI can't embody. Passion and talent and persistence. Yeah, rock that shit.